Good morning, Appleby. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kaya, and I'm so honored to serve as this year's middle school prefect. Now, it took me a long time to figure out how I wanted to start this speech today, but then I was reminded of a time in my life when I felt afraid, and so I knew the only way to do this properly was to tell you all a short story. As a little kid, I always had an irrational fear of planes. The second I sat in my seat and buckled myself in, my hands would shake, my mouth would go dry, and I would clutch my mom's hand as if my life depended on it. The thought of takeoff and landing would petrify me, rendering me speechless as the plane would climb into the air. For those of you familiar with the book The Hatchet, that was essentially my worst nightmare. While I continue to be terrified, and still get a bit anxious about it to this day, I would always insist on sitting beside the window. In my mind, once the plane leveled, the view was worth my temporary fear. I've been fortunate enough to visit incredible cities and meet people from all different walks of life, but nothing will beat that feeling of finally opening my eyes, looking out the window, and seeing the world around me. While this shows up in different ways across my life, I believe there's something to be said about being in a situation of no control and turning that fear that you might feel into something beautiful. Being in this role and having the opportunity to speak to you all today challenges me in a way that took more than 3 years to adapt to and still scares me if I'm being honest. It wasn't until I was placed into a situation of zero control that I learned how important it is to be vulnerable, to talk about my strengths, and more importantly, my weaknesses. About 2 weeks into the summer before grade 9, I had a routine checkup at a doctor's office in which I was diagnosed with a severe case of idiopathic adolescent scoliosis. If you're unfamiliar with this term, it is essentially a curvature that develops in the spine for no apparent reason. My 2 spinal curves were alarmingly large, and before I knew it, I was wearing a back brace for 22 out of 24 hours a day to control it. In the span of a few months, my entire routine had changed. Emotionally, I could feel all the strength I had built up deteriorating as I became increasingly aware of how my body looked crooked and how my brace would leave bruises along my hips. At 13, I was worried about my appearance in a way I should never have been. Through this discomfort, however, the only thing on my mind was how on earth can I hide this from the people I'm going to meet at my new school. I was ashamed of something I had no way of changing, and fully believed that people would never care enough to listen, but would rather judge me based on the plastic I had to wear under my uniform. The first time I told my advisor group about my brace was in Timogamy in grade 9, and I wish I was exaggerating when I say I felt like I was going to pass out. They let me speak my mind, and instead of that closed-off reaction I had expected, I was greeted with, "Wow, that is so cool, so you can basically drum anywhere you go," before they proceeded to assemble a seat made out of pillows, that way I was more comfortable on the ground next to them. While they might not even remember it, it was in that moment that I realized that this was something I could talk about, and a pretty awesome conversation starter if all else fails. With that in mind, for those of you who are around me now, you most likely have seen me loosening or tightening the straps on my brace, randomly cracking my back, or even drumming on it in class as suggested without a care of who's around. This experience taught me that in a situation that I can't change, I have to speak up, be vulnerable, and use my voice to make a difference. Through sharing something that I considered my greatest weakness with others, I've been able to mentor young girls who, like me, felt alone in the beginning. Hearing their stories and the ways they've opened up to fiercely express themselves without reserve inspires me each and every day in ways that I can't possibly explain. Now, in my short time of learning to be vulnerable, I've been fortunate to come across author Brené Brown. Something that stuck with me in particular is this one quote of hers from her book, Rising Strong. Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. Her words remind me every day to be vulnerable enough to accept my perceived flaws and know that is what makes me human, while being brave enough to say that this is all a part of who I am. I cannot promise that what you share will be received in the way that you want it to be, or that it should be. I can tell you about times that my trust in others has been abused and my insecurity played out as a way of putting me down. But I'd rather encourage you from the bottom of my heart to not let individuals like that stop you from sharing your journey. While I might live with this physical limitation for the rest of my life, visiting doctors and feeling that fear prior to each x-ray appointment, it's only by being vulnerable that emotionally I've been able to beat the curve. Now middle school. I know for some of you this is the start of a new school, a new setting filled with new people. For others, you're coming back to a place you know that in just a short while has changed in appearance. While everything might feel different, I hope that you can be proud of how you've handled these past few months. The silent battles in which you felt broken and had to pick yourself up again. To grow, you have to allow yourself to crack open and drop your guards that your mind can rest. To quote Brene Brown once again, owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy, the experiences that make us the most vulnerable. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our own light. Now, practicing vulnerability goes both ways. I hope that now more than ever we can find it within ourselves to lead with empathy and compassion for others, not to be dismissive but supportive and assist others in finding their own voice. Most importantly, to listen and communicate to those around you that they are not alone. It's okay to fail at this. In fact, I'd be surprised if you're able to get it right every time. But at the end of the day, you'll go to sleep, then the sun will rise, and you'll try again. When we first become aware of our weaknesses, we may think that life will work out in a particular fashion, that the concept of being normal is a linear thing. But why not embrace what makes you as special as you are and view each day as a part of your perfectly imperfect journey? Know your worth and strive to share it with others, as that is the only way to build connections. The only way to be truly free of your own limitations is to stop avoiding difficult conversations. I used to be fearful of being sensitive as I thought it made me weak. But the experiences I've had make me who I am today, and who would I be without sharing that? So this is my challenge for you. Whether you're a new M1 or in your senior year, share those small yet defining moments that make you who you are. Be brave and take the window seat on the way to your next adventure. It is only by having courage that we can share our wildest achievements, and more importantly, our greatest weaknesses. That is the essence of being vulnerable, and vulnerability in itself is a beautiful thing. Now we conclude with one of my personal favorite hymns, Amazing Grace. Thank you.